Hello everyone, MasterZeon1001 here, and in a previous video I had built this piston and uploaded a time lapse, and post the recording I set up a few constraints and did some parenting, and now this object's able to just move back and forth infinitely. You know, the usual trick of just creating an empty that drives a extrapolation constraint, you know, my favorite. I have plenty of videos on the channel actually talking about how I use transformation constraints to just take advantage of a rotation and then use it to drive the translation of other objects. So nothing special there, but I've been having some fun with Substance Painter lately, and I figured that with Substance Painter possibly transitioning into becoming a full-on Adobe product, that we might as well have our final hurrah with it in hopes that we can enjoy a little Substance Painter before its inevitable demise. Real depressing, but I know. I just hope for the best for it because I have invested a considerable amount of time gaining an understanding of it. So let's set our frame to be 199 for both the start and the end, so that way if we play the timeline it just freezes in place. And if we press Alt V and we look at our topology, we see that this topology is not optimized for games. This isn't game topology, this is more subdivision topology, which is of a different discipline and has a completely different purpose to me. In fact, when I look at this, I look at a finalized looking model that has a effect on it that's capable of being able to be sent through final rendering, but whenever it comes to UVing and texture painting, that's of course another story. So let's actually deal with the worst part first. If I wanted to break this object down, personally just looking at it, if I were to have to break this down, I would let's Shift D, take both of these into local mode. We'll press M. Before we go into local mode, let's press M and move this to a new collection called low. And let's just press 1, 2, 3 to jump to the collection low. We'll make it collection 2, so 1 is the real piston, 2 is the collection low. Let's press Control Shift S, and it'll take me a moment to hit my stride for this. I gotta start thinking in terms of breakdown, but first things first is we need to get rid of all the subdivision. Next thing is I want to union these two pieces together so that way the baking is just a little bit easier for it, but we want to make sure that we have some penetration happening on all sides. So I'm going to apply the mirror. We'll also apply this mirror. Let's select everything, Shift tilde, just to make sure there's not any holes in the mesh. As you guys know, I have select boundary loops mapped to Shift tilde, so when I select everything and press Shift tilde, that's my way of querying the surface if there's any holes. So let's union this together, and it looks like things worked out. So let's apply it with just Control A, Visual Geometry to Mesh, and Shift tilde grabbing in edit mode just to make sure. Let's take this moment to split it with a bisect mod. Also, I'm going to rate this song a 1 star and move on to the next one. Still on the quest to rate all of the Feist discography. So we're going to definitely be needing to merge some doubles, and you know, I was originally thinking, man, I should get in and also try to reduce the counts on the circles, but you know, whenever it comes to retopologizing or configuring an object for baking, I have a different mindset to it. I'm thinking geometry reduction while holding the silhouette. I'm not thinking about flows and support loops, definitely not thinking about that. So the name of the game is basically what loops can we remove while still holding the form of the shape. So all these reinforcement loops that we talked about, completely irrelevant. They're no longer required. Having these topological flows that we have that end in this, you know, I guess that could work. We could also just converge it all to a trie, and that's also fine. But you know, whenever I'm told, hey, you got to break this down for basically game import or baking, my thought is on the poly count, which right now we're at 705, but if we had some sort of poly limit stipulations, which is typically the case for pretty much every client job ever, they're usually like, hey, I want these models to be 500 polys or 500 tries or whatever. Usually I'll have a document written with their criteria, so I just am haunted by it the entire time as a success failure bar. But we're just getting in here and just sliding around geometry, just reducing, just thinking in terms of reduction and what actually doesn't contribute to the form. And when it comes to this mesh, there's so much that doesn't, because you know, we just we made it for the gram. In fact, we got to really double check these edges just to make sure that the ones that we evaporate are not accidentally the wrong ones. We're just going to converge these at their nearest connection points. But really, it doesn't matter if we have all of this have a geometry flow, because I've been replying to a lot of comments. They're like, man, this is a really heavy game model. I'm like, this is not a game model. If you're putting subdivision on it, it's not going in a game. You know, what game engine has a subdivision modifier? If there is, let me know. But I haven't yet to hear about one. And so, you know, to my knowledge, the rules of the game remain the same. So we're just breaking it down more and more. You can see what my poly counts are getting to as we continue reducing this to turn it into something that will just be a beauty for the bake. Easy bake oven. Let's also turn off the mirror modifier and just look at the inside. And of course, dealing with exact means that we got exacted, guys. And you know, when I say exacted, I mean we opened a can of howdy doody hell demons over here. Like, let's just get in here and clean it up. You know, me personally, whenever I have to deal with advanced cleanup situations, I actually approach it from a state of gratitude, because I'm a weirdo, but also because I'm glad for the opportunity to gain a slightly better understanding of geometry and what can go awry with it. You know, sounds really weird. It's like, thank you for messing me up, Blender, but seriously, like, thank you for showing me this this opportunity and allowing me to better my mesh. Let's also use Polygon Debug. And the only thing that wow, Polygon Debug is looking a little crazy. Let's shift in, just make sure our normals are calculated the correct direction. And I feel like we have double geometry happening in here, but really that could be the Polygon Debug offsetting from the surface. So let's just get in here and just take a good look at our geometry. I almost feel like this area could just converge over at the edge. However, I feel that I'm making a regrettable decision. Sometimes I can be guilty of oversimplification whenever it comes to getting the stuff broken down for a bake. So let's undo that, because you know, I'm always being told, hey man, it's a new age, you don't have to be so harsh with your simplification. So just remembering all the times I've been told that, which is frankly a lot, because I always get crazy about simplification and it's completely unnecessary. I mean, the longer that we focus on this, the more of a chance I'm going to start just making hot moves, because and hot moves in this case, I'm talking about things that are, you know, reducing the silhouette, and we don't want to do that because it'll affect our baking experience. And I want to have a good bake experience. You know, you can decide on what kind of bake experience you want before you even get into the baking, just by making those choices at this level of your mesh configuration or reconfiguration. So even this, I just can't see all these areas. I just can't see this happening. Gotta simplify. You know, there's going to be no subdivision involved, so I know I can get away with such things. And if we look at this, we can go to 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So far so good. This piece, I consider it to be a little bit of a pain, and also we forgot to get that piece. So let's go to layer 2, and I'm just going to select this, and instead of dealing with some Boolean business, let's go vanilla with it. So I'm going to grab this, Alt S to push this out, and let's go from 1, 2, 1, 2. I pushed the wrong mesh. Alright, I'm not sure what mesh I was pushing, but I'm pretty sure it was the wrong one. So something like that, layer 1, layer 2, layer 1, layer 2. Let's go back to, I keep calling these layers, but they're just collections, but to me they're layers. I apologize for the terminology incorrections, but they're layers to me. Let's go back to layer 2, and we don't want to be a local, so just moving around back and forth. Like I said, it'll take a moment for me to really hit my stride with this and start hitting that max speed. But once I hit it, you can't stop me. And we could also reduce the cylinder rounds on the circle, but that's also another point of critique that I receive a lot in my previous studies with this, is that, hey man, you're really going hard on reducing your cylinder, and as a result you've hurt your silhouette. And so anime flashbacks of prior mistakes, I suppose. So let us just remove bevel, let us remove subdivision, let us apply boolean, and for some reason we cannot just apply the screw. If we try to apply just a boolean and without applying the screw, we're obviously making a mistake. And this thing's going straight up on Sketchfab, so I do want it to look good. And so that's also why I'm not like going in and reducing my counts on geometry. But let's just mirror this in half and do our thing, you know, where we basically add a loop, bring it over. And I don't know, I'm always in this mode of solving, even though I don't need to solve like this. We could just triangulate and seriously call it a day, but old habits, guys. So let's go to this layer. We're just going to press H on everything that's currently dealt with and leave only the things that are not dealt with. So this is what we have, this is what remains. We're also going to save this. It's already been incrementally saved, so it's a new file if you're getting the Patreon files. And let's turn off wireframe. I just want to make sure that this is getting the rounding that it needs, and I feel like it isn't. So if we press Alt V and we look at the wireframe, let's turn off triangulate and subdivision for just a moment and just take a look at what we have. So we have something that's fairly rounded, right? And then if we bevel it, we get this. So let us just go into bevel and just start playing with our bevel amount. So that is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid that. So, you know, it's a game of angles whenever it comes to this sort of stuff. And let us turn on triangulate, let's turn on subdivision, and now this is actually what I want to see. You know, when we export this and bake from it, if we have mistakes on the high, they're going to bake on the low. The other thing is, do I care about each individual seal ring? Am I going to do some crazy Sketchfab presentation where this thing's going to be exploding into like all the different rings? Heck no. I'm not an engineer. I'm an artist. Come on, get out of here. Leave me alone. So with this thing, we could probably at least correct these to be subdivision capable. So I think we probably do want to do that just so we have a nicer bake. So I'm going to press 3 and add a bevel, and we can press 3 during it to get basically a subdivision conversion bevel. And this means that next I can add a subdivision to it, and this object's now rounded. Let's grab this object, let's add a bevel again. I'm going to press 3 to use a subdivision conversion bevel, and we see that the normals didn't work out for this. So let's try hitting flip on the screw modifier, because we have the screw modifier. More than likely that thing's giving us the business. So maybe something like that, and then let's try hitting it with a subdivision modifier. So now this is our result. If we turn off the wireframe, we can just make sure that it's nicely rounded on that side. Like, for example, I don't know if I like what I'm seeing at this moment. So let's go under bevel and just raise our angle. Actually, we probably do like what we're seeing. Let's try lowering the angle just so we grab this extra area as well. And then from here, let's put subdivision back, and we have something that's a little bit more intentional looking, at least to me. So this piece, let's go in local mode, Alt V. Because it was for the gram before, we didn't have to care about this stuff, but because we're baking, I personally feel that every part is important. Like I'm always telling people, maybe don't cut corners on stuff that matters. Maybe you should do some experimentations with mitigating where you cut your corners at, which sounds really weird as advice. But if I'm going to cut corners, I'm going to cut corners where it's not going to be seen and called out and made fun of by my peers. Hopefully, you know, I still got those really particular peers who will make fun of anything, even the effort of accomplishment. So let us just, what color was this one? Where is this? This one is, I don't even know where I'm looking. Okay, we're looking here. Okay, actually we're looking here. And so this one is brown. Both of these are brown rubber. But the viewport color is random, so that's what's actually throwing us off. So we might as well change these viewport colors around. This one should probably be blue. Usually I make steel like kind of a bluish color, and then we could make the actual dark rubber just some very dark version of blue. And at least now that visually makes sense to me. I know what I'm dealing with. So back to this thing. Let's go in, add a bevel, press 3. You know, we could just deal with just the bevel being the thing that's adding kind of detail that's going to come through in the bake. But, you know, subdivisions are miser right now. So let us just, let's party with sub D. You know, we're just giving it chapter 85, giving it the D. So with this shape, I am going to go inside of Modifier Scroll, and I need a particular version of this model. So I need a version that has the screw applied and the boolean, but not anything else. So if we shift click to apply, we basically applied a duplicate version and deleted all the modifiers that remain. So this object is what we need. This is it. We just move this to low and we're good to go. So this object though isn't ready. In fact, we're going to try to keep the silhouette of the circle, but everything in between is up for renegotiation. And what I mean by that is, well, firstly, let's do a bisect mod because there is a degree of symmetry. Let's take advantage of that. And, you know, these edges are all fine. You know, really looking at it, for the most part, this thing's fine. I was talking a big game, like I was going to hit this thing hard with the sledgehammer like I'm Triple H, but, you know, we're not doing that. So let's just get in here and just begin merging points. That edge just needs to go. Convergence, convergence. And I'm not talking about the DC event with Talos where he basically put all the DC universes on a big battle planet. That was terrible. You know, they tried with that thing. However, it was exciting at the time. I was like, oh man, what's Talos about to be doing, man? So, you know what Talos is doing? Getting beat down by like 15 Batmans. It turns out that he was Brainiac's chump. You know, anytime the villain starts expositing about their life, I'm just like, oh my god, it's over. It's over. They're like, when I was a kid, I was abused. It's like, oh my god, villain, you gotta pull it together, man. You know, you sucked up 800 universes and put them on a battle planet. You need to die cold and heartless, unfortunately. So I think that something like that will actually do the job. You know, I'm often guilty of overanalyzing. For example, I really feel that what I just did was a subdivision tactic, and what I need to do is think in terms of geometrical optimization. You can see what my point counts are up in the corner, and they're really not that high. Like, I sometimes can be a little overkill on point reduction and what I value. You know, what I value on a model is probably different than what you're going to value. Alright, also this song's a 1 star. I need to be able to tell Siri, just, hey Siri, you know, 1 star this song. Like I said, my music, also Siri's now trying to talk to me. Get that out of here. So, we can drop that off and, you know, really call that a day. You know, as long as there's no n-gons. As long as there's no n-gons. So, let's press H, 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 and we're going to have to go back and merge and, like, make, like, super objects. So this one, what do we want to do with this? Well, part of me wants to just treat all of this as if it's just one big thing. So let's actually, I'm going to take this object first, and we'll just go through Modifier Scroll, and we'll just scroll to the, first of all, let's activate Modifier Scroll. And then we can press tab to drop it in live, and we have our you know, .ui. And so what I want to do is actually toggle off subdivision and have just what I'm seeing here, and then we can shift click to get our duplicate version. We'll move this to low, And so we're going to select this, Modifier Scroll, scroll through it until we're about where we want. And I do not want bevel, and I do not want subdivision involved in this, just these two literally. We will shift click to get a duplicate, we'll move it to low. And from here we now have these two pieces that we're able to address. So let's look at what we have on layer 1 and we have as far as our piece is concerned, and we realize that, you know, some of these sections that we are taking out, we probably want to second think, because, you know, I'm just going to bake this stuff over. I was thinking when I was dancing around this, convincing myself that it's a good idea to do another video, that, you know, we should try to just bake all this stuff over to it, even though there's a little bit of a gap. But, you know, I'm always surprised sometimes with the results that I get out of baking, so this might be another one of those opportunities. Also, it looks real bad what I'm doing, but really all we're doing is just healing from what we had. Like, now that we are encompassing these things, we don't have to have geometry that is built for every single one of these little sills, because literally I don't care. I mean, I was looking at this thing, in the original video I was making a bunch of jokes about these specific parts, but I'm not trying to become a documentary channel about pistons and hydraulics and stuff. Like, not me. Just trying to model stuff, guys. Have a good time modeling. Everybody always has some want or dream. My response, of course, is always be the change you want to see. Just kidding, but seriously. Let's take these two, connect them, connect this. Also, what are we connecting? This, all redundant. Just get that out of here. This is redundant. This is redundant. You ever just wake up and realize that you're fixing a bunch of redundant geometry? Like, what are we doing, guys? That's what I'm saying. Sometimes I'll just click. I'll just lose it and realize, what am I doing? What geometry? You know, the discipline is a flip of subdivision. I'm just thinking in subdivision mode, but really I don't need to be doing that. I need to be thinking in terms of just baking and optimization and simplification. I mean, I will kill you. I will send this edge out of here. Don't test me. You know, real testy with geometry right now. But we're making it through it. This is what we have. This is what remains. So, you know, when it comes to the breakdown process, to me, it's just a math game. For this piece, how do we want to break that down? Well, I'm going to press QOT, and we're just going to add a cylinder, and I'll move the mouse until it fits exactly where I need it. And let's just grab all of this, E, Alt S. E, S, E. You know, we're just kind of walking on faith here, because I have no idea what's going on. So we should press Q and change this to shade wire, so that way I can see what's going on. And then we could just snap and scale, and, you know, I almost want to test my luck, test my might with that. You know, instead of just extruding it in there, we could actually take this piece, scale this in, make it a taper instead, so it actually will show up in the bake. If it's flat, it'll be boring, but, you know, maybe something like that. And I'm guilty. I'm the type of person who will just embellish the high because I just like having a bunch of isms. Like, for example, we'll use EM macro to just kind of push in an additional ring, and then we can grab all of the boundary edges and bevel and press P. Actually, we don't have to bevel because we have this bevel here doing it for us, already setting it to a profile of 1. So if we tab out, this is what we're getting. So I just want something nice happening whenever it comes to the normal bake. You know, sometimes I'm just thinking about the bake, but this is our low mesh version of it. So if we press Q and we go back to shade solid, we could move this over to low, and you know, another piece bites the dust. So get that out of here. This thing, how are we gonna, oh geez, okay, for a second I didn't know what I was looking at, but actually we want to change our auto smooth so that way it looks correct, and from here it actually looks better. But I believe someone complained that it didn't look enough like the reference, so I think I made some post edits right before I began recording. I should have actually shown how I basically grabbed this loop and just pushed it back to get it to look better, but anyways, whatever. Always something. Let us take this, and we just want to Shift D duplicate, and we will just move this to low. And let's just get rid of subdivision and bevel. Take a look at what we have and just think about how we can optimize it. Obviously, there's some optimizations to be had with this. But I'm like so loose whenever it comes to basically what it is required for baking and the breakdown process. Because if you're trying to go for an all quad game res model, I just never hear about that. I mean, quads where it matters, tries where you need reductions. You know, those are the geometric rules, at least as far as I understand them. So just looking at this and thinking about how else we can reduce this, really reducing it any further would just be dramatic. So we're fine. We look at our original one, we look at this one, and we don't want to deviate too far, you know, because of the bake. So let's go ahead and hide that as well. This object, I was like thinking about how we could have broke this down, and I think I just realized that it's easier to just Shift D, remove subdivision. We move this to low, and then the one that's on low, we can just go in local mode and talk about how we can reduce this. So I'm going to press V to rip this, and I would press V to rip this. And we're talking about a 36 round cylinder. Now the old me would try to turn this into a 16 round cylinder for baking, but I've been told that those are like 1985 rules, and that optimizing cylinders is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous to reduce them down to nothing, unless I'm trying to put myself on a mobile phone, and you know how I feel about mobile games. Alright, had it crash there. However, if you know, my backgrounds weren't complained about in previous content, that would have been a great background to show. You know, I like to have something on my background to keep me inspired whenever crashes occur, because it's easy for me to just be like, you know what, I'm just calling it a day. I will approach this tomorrow. But, you know, having a nice background will keep you at your computer. It's like, you know, there's hope out there. No wonder Superman keeps saving the Earth. It's for the, you know, no wonder Superman represents America. It's for the American hiney. So let us just get in here and dissolve loops and pretend like we did not have a crash just end us. Right now I'm using the 2.93.4 LTS, which I could be using 3.0. There's like nothing particular about it right now, but I do enjoy using the LTS just to make sure that things are nice and stable on the LTS side. So I do wonder how these threads are going to bake, so I'm just going to just try giving this some sort of geometry. You know, we'll just extrude it, press Alt S just to push it. You know, probably not the best, but we got to have something for these threads, and I feel like that's about enough geometry. You know, we look at this right now, we're at 4,955, or why do I keep looking at edges? We're at 2,460 verts. We look at the original one, we're at about 12,000. However, it goes down when we hide stuff. So right now, all that's left up on screen is 13,000. If we unhid everything, we'd see a much higher poly count, because whenever it comes to Sub D, I look at it like no mercy sort of modeling. So let's press Shift D and duplicate this. I'm just going to remove the subdivision, which has broken this down into a much simpler shape of itself. And part of me wonders, is it worth it to remove the subdivision You know, maybe we could apply a level 1 subdivision just to give ourselves a nicer base to start from. Like I said, I am often guilty of reducing shapes just way too much. So let's just try it out. Let's just try using a slightly higher base for this mesh. You know, I'm trying to change my old ways. I'm just zoning out into music as I do this, trying to remain focused with you guys. You know, number one cause of time lapses are me just zoning out and thought like I should probably just start doing video segments on it. It's like, you know what, guys, I'm gonna that'd be crazy, right? Alright guys, I'm gonna zone out for about 20 minutes and hit Super Saiyan Ultra Instinct mode real quick. Just, you know, it'll be fine. You know, come back. Now that the villain is dead, we have gathered the Dragon Balls to wish back all of our friends who were cannon fodder for the main villain before Goku showed up. But we're just sliding geometry, just BSing. I mean, what else is there to talk about? You want me to talk about this exact process, how I press GG every GD day? No, I'm kidding. But I do press a lot of GG. I almost want to mark things sharp just to have this look nice, but you know, I'm just going to take it at this value. I mean, we could hit it with an auto smooth and then roll the auto smooth down to something acceptable, but yeah, maybe a little auto smooth. We could bring this up just to make this meet. Really just thinking too hard on this thing. We will move this to our scene of low. And this piece that I thought about so hard, like, is it going to be too much? 2,750 verts, so we're like literally nowhere. However, we should deal with this piece that's in the middle, because I don't want to deal with that as a separate bake piece. We're just going to Alt E and just E and then Alt S in order to push it. So maybe something like that. And because of the mirror, I gotta keep pressing Alt S, but we just want to make sure that it's fitting that same shape. And we're also going to turn off auto smooth, just keep it looking crazy. And let's go back to layer 1, which is the main object, and we're just going to hide it, and let's unhide everything. So everything that I'm hiding, we should probably just move somewhere else. Also, let's get rid of the glass. The glass is something that I'm going to have to revisit a way to make a glass piston work, but I totally want a glass piston. You know, the moment I said that, I was like, man, I bet you could smoke out of, if you make a glass piston, you'd just be smoking it, just inhaling all sorts of hydraulic fluid. But, you know, this thing's 222,000, and our broke down version is 200 or 2,846. So, you know, we're not doing that bad. So from here, let's now move on to the UVing process. Alright, so I got UV squares and UV pack master 2, so let's go ahead and just jump to the UVing portion of things. So for this particular object, for any object, I'll just think about how can I cut it flat and make it fit in a manila envelope. So we can mark this as a seam, we'll mark this area as a seam, we'll mark this area as a seam, and this means that I could just select it with L. And let's actually change this into being a UV editor. And if we press U, this is what our unwrap's looking like. On everything, let's just go ahead and apply our scale, because we just don't want any sort of madness when it comes to the scale. And so we'll just select everything, unwrap, this is what we're looking at. However, we want to apply to mirror, so that way we can get proper unwraps and have unique things per each coordinate. So I can't say that I'm a UV master or anything. You know, I'm just a guy. You know, I'm just a guy trying to survive through the day. So looking at this piece, just thinking about how we could best approach making it flat. You know, sometimes I look at this stuff and I'm like, you know, I think it could be flatter. For example, now after adding a few more seams, we get this as a result, which, I don't know, just plays to my sensibilities. I'm a big fan of triplanar mapping, so I might have a bit of an over-reliance upon it as a texturing medium, which kind of has bled into my unwrapping solutions, but we'll go ahead and mark this as a seam. Control click, mark seam. This area will now unwrap like this. If we select it, we can go into end panel, and because of UV squares, we can just choose to grid by shape or to square grid, or I guess in this case, because of our geometry, we'll press SY, P, and then we'll re-unwrap it. Do the same thing to this side, SY0, P, U, unwrap, and we could just really force the solution to be exactly what we want it to be, which is also something that I spend an inordinate amount of time taking advantage of, unwrapping UVs. So let's Alt P, U, unwrap, and Alt P, and really I just don't care whenever it comes to the perfection of the flatness of things. You know, I know that there's a lot of people who swear by RISM, things like that, but at the end of the day, I often am able to get the results that I'm going for with UV unwrapping enough to please the client and terminate the job. And really, at the end of the day, that's all I can really ask for, is an ending to a job. You know, worst thing you could do to me is give me a job that has no ending, because I'm always going to search for an ending. Let's select this. We'll press U. I keep pressing I. Let's also make sure we definitely did not press I. We don't want to add any additional polys. So unwrap. So for this one, because of the configuration of it, we can grid by shape. Just double checking, making sure. Let's press H, select this, U, unwrap. We can now press Alt H, bring everything back, and let's just, man, it just be, I just get blind seeing all these damn options. So we choose pack, we can just get a packing, and that's enough for now. So that piece is done. And for all these pieces, we want to give it a special UV material. So what I'm going to do is hack HardOps, meaning that I'm going to go under Add Modifier, and we're just going to go to UV Project, and if we shift click it, we can add a grid material. And then I'm going to delete this, which basically leaves this object with just a material for displaying the UV. So if we press Alt V and we turn on Solid Texture Toggle, it looks like this. And let's just call this UV Matte. We select everything, and we assign it the material of UV Matte on this section, and we're good to go. So I mean, that's it. I just know that HardOps is able to add a UV Matte through that section. Also, we're definitely going to have to deal with our textual density, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. So let's deal with this piece. How shall we unwrap this and make it flat? Before applying the mirror, let's at least lay in our basic themes. So I'm seeing something like this happening, where basically we can mark this as a seam, meaning that we can face select it with L, press U, and get a very nice unwrap. And for this area, we're just going to pretend like it's some origami. So I'm just checking for edges. That's why I keep zooming in obsessively. And that will give us something like this. Let's Alt H, and let's just apply the modifier and unwrap, giving us this. We definitely want uniqueness happening all across it, so we can play with our roughness a bit, have some fun. And so now it comes down to this piece. How shall we unwrap this? You know, HardOps can do a very good job of just marking all of your sharp edges and unwrapping it for you, but you know, whenever it comes to work that matters, I will definitely get intimate with it if there's a paycheck on the line. Just saying. If you need me to care, I will care. Maybe too much. Just kidding, but like I said, you gotta choose where you want to cut your corners at. You know, I personally choose to cut them very late in the process, especially, you know, I wait till I'm fatigued and burnt out, and then that's when, you know, corners can start to get cut. But before that, I have a pretty good amount of spirit. And we could have definitely used hops marking to assist us with this, but, you know, we're able to knock this out. So with this piece, let's press U and unwrap just to see what we get. And is that so bad? Is that so bad? You know, I keep asking you guys as if you'll give me an answer. Let's also, on layer 1, let's look at the seams, and we realize that we are about to make some mistakes on this. So let's get in and deal with that. You know, maybe you, the viewer, saw that I was what am I selecting? I'm in edit mode. Select this object, go in edit mode. Dissolve. You know, I'm looking at this, I'm like, isn't this looking a little complex? And because vert emerges on, everything's just getting reduced as we slide it around, which is the great part. Also, with this inside area, we were too lenient allowing this to live. This really simplifies a lot of our work. So it's for the better that we do this. Let's get rid of this loop so that way we can properly dissolve it. And let's undo until we get this side back too. And we're just going to need to get rid of a few of these edges that are helping our solution. So that way we can override it until we get something like that. And just begin dissolving loops that aren't needed. Let's get out of solid view so that way we can really analyze what we're getting here. You know, for example, who's this loop? Who is this loop for? Why does this loop exist? This loop is a holdout. This loop, why does it exist? I know, hard decisions, but you know, the amount of simplification that we're able to offer it is immense because it's such a basic piece, guys. So let's Alt V, solid texture toggle, and we're back to looking at the mesh. Let's press U, unwrap, and from here we are just looking at our mesh, just thinking about how we want to unwrap this. I'm thinking that these two pieces possibly don't even need to have their markings the way they are. We could basically mark only their boundaries like so. In fact, we'll just use hops to do it. And that will allow us to get something that unwraps a little more manifold like so. And then for this piece, let's unwrap it again. And we see this, the most basic unwrap ever. So we'll apply our mirror, select everything, U, unwrap. Let's look at what our geometry is looking like for this. So because of our topology, if we try to use grid by shape, it's going to come out weird. If we try to use square grid, it'll come out weird. So let's think about this. Do we want to just bisect the tops off like so? And then unwrap it, giving us something like this, which will give us these breaks in it. I would actually rather it be continuous. In fact, we could probably get away with putting our seams in the locations where I have them now. And let's unwrap, and this gives us something like that, which I feel is a little bit more acceptable. We at least have something a lot more relaxed over here. And if we look at our UVs, you know, they're not bad. It really just depends on your opinion and your goals whenever it comes to UVs. So if we look at this shape, this thing almost looks done. We are just going to mark a single edge, and let's just try unwrapping it. And you know, classic cylindrical unwrap scenario. So let us just trim the tops because I ain't got time for that. And maybe something like that. We could select this to grid by shape, just give us something really equalized. And you know, that shape's done. We could just press H on it. And so let's double check and just make sure that we are encompassing all our sills, because I don't want any weirdness. And so how do you think we should deal with this one? I'm thinking that Control E, mark seam, unwrap, really just looking at this real hard, thinking as fast as possible. Now, what do we do there, huh? Let's mark our seam. Let's clear the seam that's in the middle because, you know, that'll always happen. And we'll unwrap again, giving us something a little bit better. So let's just apply the mirror and let's just select everything and unwrap. And this one came out really hemispherical. So let's try grid by shape, and we see that topologically that's just not going to work. And that's just a thing. We could give it just that one loop that it requests, and then we could actually grid it by shape. But is it worth it? Probably. It would actually be a little bit more efficient on space, I think. So basically all they're asking for is that we subdivide these two edges and we place an edge in the middle. And let's just see how topologically modifying this can assist us with our solution. So I'm going to press Alt X in order to push it on the other side using Mesh Machine. So now we have this, and we grid by shape, and let's just call it a day. So if it's just requiring one loop in its correction, you know, let's just do it. So now for this piece, and I'm just going to select all of these loops, you know, really simplifying it on these unwraps today. But I'm telling you, sometimes simplicity, like Subdivision, simplicity is just easier sometimes than it is adding 800 seam related excuses to your mesh to not work out. Let's try that again. L, and we press U. U is right next to I. They should stop. Just big keyboard in general. So if we press unwrap, we get a decent unwrap. So let's just apply the mirror and unhide everything. We unwrap, and so this piece, grid shape. This piece is not going to be a grid shape, not going to be a square grid shape. You know, if we really want it to be like somewhat flat, we could SX0. Let's see, let's try it again. SX0, and then when we unwrap it, it will be a little more conformal. First, we gotta pin it though. So let's select the right island, not that one. It's this one that we're trying to straighten out. Unwrap, and for this side, and I used to do this back in the day. I would just pin things and then just re-unwrap it in order to get them to fit inside of a series of boundaries. But I felt that, you know, just so much extra work, not necessary. But, you know, look at the UVs, you decide. So we get rid of that, and we have just this piece left. How do we unwrap a cylinder? Also, do we need this face? The answer may shock you. We are going to select this ring, mark a seam, and add one line at the bottom because no one will look there. If you do, please don't. Let's mark this as a seam too, and then unwrap it again. And with that, we could reduce our solution for a seam by 1, and then unwrap again, giving us this as a very large piece. And then if we choose to grid by shape, that will do the job for us, giving us this as our unwrap. We can just hide it. Let's also unwrap this. I'm afraid to call things screws and nuts and bolts now because so many commenters. And we're just going to remove all marked sharpings. And I am thinking for this unwrap that we can just do something like that, where we split that side off. We put a seam in the middle like so, and then whenever we unwrap it, it'll come out looking like this, where there's basically a ring in the middle. But do we even need this ring we don't need this ring in the middle. Sorry, I'm overthinking again. Let's try it again. You unwrap, and let's look at what we get. So I actually want to try something a little more unraveling whenever it comes to this. So let's just mark this whole thing as a seam, unwrap, and you know, that's almost cool. Let's try grid by shape, and I'm pretty sure we've distorted the holy bejesus out of this mesh, but it is now unwrapped, and you know, everyone was talking about UV squares, so might as well show it some love today. Let's mark this as a seam. Mark as a seam. So something like that, I'm thinking. Let's apply the mirror and press U and unwrap, and we got some owls, you know, just looking at us. Who did this? Let's try to mitigate that owl, something like that. You know, now we're cooking. So with this one, to grid by shape, and with this one, we are just going to flatten it, press P, scale it, SX, scale it as well to try to get it to fit, press P to get its constraints in line. And let's actually select just the piece we want to re-unwrap. And we could just keep pinning and flattening areas until we can get it to fit exactly inside of the bounds that we want, just depending on what you want. I try not to get so crazy about UVs anymore, because even if you make UVs a masterpiece, your client won't care. They're just like, okay, I'm having bake errors or whatever. You know, they just find an issue to keep talking to you because they're lonely. But anyways, let's go back to solid texture toggle and just take a look at what our result is so far. So if we look at it with UVs, we have a very nice UV set. I still feel that I should probably go through, select everything, and choose to pack islands, or at least average their scale, I believe is the right one. And we could probably select everything, tab into edit mode, select everything, and just choose to average the island scale, just so everything is correct in terms of the particular object. You know, we might have scaled some islands up or something, I don't know. And the next thing is to try to get them all packed onto the same sheet. So we can try just, let's see, where is it? Pack islands. Now we have them fitting all inside of the same sheet. If we look at it, that isn't bad. However, every time I play with UV Pack Master, I'm like impressed with what they pack. So let's try it this time. I already have it pointing to my application, and we're just going to hit pack. And this thing only took like a second. Let's press N, hit pack again, and we can just keep playing with it until we get it absolutely right. But we probably do want a little bit of margin between them, just me. So, you know, maybe 0.15. And something like that's a little more acceptable. I always leave a little bit of space just in case I want to add something later, like decals or something. But like I said, these are just my opinions personally. Like, this isn't the way to do anything. This is just a recommended way, or just even how I would approach some things. Just that's it, all it is. Don't get your jimmies rustled. So the other thing is textual density. Whenever I use Textual Density Checker, I have such a kind of archaic workflow that I just go in and just click what I'm doing and calculate my TD, and then just set my TD, and that's usually pretty much all that's required for it. Let's double check that. Let's try it again. Calculate TD, set it, and we got a little bit out of control there. Let's try it again. There we go. And then back to UV Pack Master, where we can just repack this. I'm pretty sure I was using it wrong, but you know, I just like to make sure that they're all fairly even, and it looks like we could probably lower our margins a little bit. I might have been a little bit dramatic with how we dealt with our packing. So I'm just going to divide this by 2, and let's pack that again, and let's divide it by 2, and it was probably right the first time. I'm just still so used to margins being an issue, which really they aren't as much as they used to be. And something like that, now I have a really tight UV setup going. So now comes the least fun part, and that's naming and getting everything connected to each other. So this is a new file, 1.3, so we're not going to damage our previous files that we have everything separate and very nice, but we are going to have to do a bit of merging and combining. And so I'm just going to hide everything that is not relevant for the matter at hand. So all of these glass pieces, we don't want them even getting involved anymore. So I'm going to just select nothing. I'll press Alt H to bring back everything. We're going to press M and move it to a new collection called _SCN. And this will just represent my scene. And this can actually be our layer 1. So if we go to layer 1 is literally our scene. Layer 2 is our high. And then layer 3 is our low. So, you know, I still think in terms of 2.79 with the classic layers. I'll always think like that. I just got used to it in 3D, but let's just get to work here. So, you know, naming is always so tough too. So let's call this fronty low. We'll just copy that to the clipboard. I know there's a add-on that also deals with naming, but we've no time to waste. So all of this stuff is merged with mirrors. I just want to make sure that they're all the same, so that way whenever we control shade, they won't be like, what the heck's going on? We call this fronty high, and we could just press H on both of those pieces. The next one is this piece that we can just call, yeah, I'm going to press F2, just call this base high, and we'll copy that to the clipboard, press H, go to our layer 3, press F2, paste that in, put low at the end, and just double check and make sure that we definitely call this base low. And I should probably bring back up the image. You know, the image will help us with the names. Let's see what this thing is called. Everything's called a sill on this thing. Alright, this thing's a piston. So let's just F2. We'll call this piston low, F2, and we'll copy that. We'll press H, go to layer 1, and for all this stuff, we are going to need to apply some modifiers. So I'm thinking that we remove subdivision from everything, which when you have to remove a bunch of modifiers from a series of meshes, that's where I definitely recommend using batch operations. Batch operations will come in so handy for this. So I'll be kicking myself for not using this as an opportunity to showcase it, even though I think I updated on this computer. It might have been a different computer. And I'm just looking at them, just making sure that none of them have subdivision. And so Control A, visual geometry to mesh, join it together, add a level of subdivision. We can F2, paste in our name, except we put high at the end. Hide that as well. So we're just, you know, working. This process to me is just working up and down a model. But the benefit of this is we can use exploded baking, which I like. So nut low, hide it. We'll go to this layer, F2. We'll call it high. You know, and I always use high, like high. Let's see, what is this piece called? It's called a piston rod. You know, not trying to be all specific, but you know, it does help us. Piston rod high. We can hide that. We can go to this one, F2. Call it piston rod low. Hide it. You know, and there's not very much left for us to do, except there's a lot left for us to do. So let's just get rid of subdivision wherever it is. You know what? We're just going to make this blue and pretend like that did not happen. And it appears that just removing subdivision causes a Boolean error to happen with this particular mesh. So this one is a trickier situation. We could just Control A and apply this one, then we'll make it blue, and this thing's going to receive subdivision again. You know, I know, weird, but it's all we can do. And I believe we started hiding stuff, which is not what we were supposed to do at this point in time. So I kind of lost order of the track of operations. But let's just continue on. Just making sure subdivision is removed, because we don't want to add a subdivision and then add a subdivision. That'll just be a little bit more subdivision than I'm willing to deal with today. And also make the bake a little bit longer than I'd be willing to wait. So let's just Alt H, and this little piece, we're going to make it black just so it fits better. And we select everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we select our piece, join it together. And we forgot to get rid of a modifier. So we made a mistake of actually merging into this mesh that has all these modifiers. So we do want to prevent that by just removing all of the modifiers, or at least applying them, and then visually converting or visually merging the geometry to mesh, just like you see me doing. And then we can press Control J. And it looks like the piece that we just joined in at the very last second. Let's see, where is it? There we go. So this piece is not actually part of this ensemble. Alright, and if we slap it with a subdivision, just looking at this piece, it looks like it got out of order. Alright, so to merge this adequately, let's just hit it with a triangulate, and then we put a subdivision on it, and then we see that now it's actually capable of making it over to a subdivision surface. So it looks like this area wasn't actually optimized for subdivision, which caused us a bit of issues whenever it came to the process of merging all this geometry together. So the best we can do is actually grab some of these pieces and just give them an inset, just to help them out whenever it comes to mitigating subdivision. And because subdivision is showing in edit mode, it's also going to choke like it is right now. I shouldn't have done this the way that I did, but maybe we can just survive this. And let's just tab out. And we see that this area just did not make it. So let's undo what we have done and reevaluate how we want to merge all of this together. So whenever it comes to solving this, we'll need to get in here and just select some of these faces and press I to inset them. This one is going to be the hard one, but these other ones we can actually get in and deal with quite easily. For this area, I'm just going to select from here to here, press Y, X, and use a little mesh machine in order to just fix this area. But because of subdivision's evaluation, it just chokes things out whenever it comes to dealing with the mesh. So it gets so strange with verti-mergy at these very small scales, but let's just get through this process. So selecting this one, we're going to press I, inset it, and hope for the best. And so the only piece left is this one last contentious area. So just checking for degenerative points caused by the Boolean operation that was previously on top of a subdivision, which was on top of a bevel, which is how this geometry was born. Let's press I, and we see a spike happening in this area. So I suspect that this geometry is not adequately merged. And we see that that is indeed the case. So let's press I again, and we see that with just a little bit of mesh troubleshooting, we now were able to get this to become subdivision capable, even though it was built in a slightly different way than what we would normally want for such a situation like this. So even this little mishap of various types of meshes built differently was able to come together in the end to make this piece. But what a pain in the neck, guys. So we're just going to F2 and call this backgroundy high, and then we can go to layer 3, select this piece, F2, we call it backgroundy low, hide it. I don't think we did anything about that yet. We'll call this grease INS high, because I think this is where grease gets inserted. Maybe I'm wrong, in which case I should have kept it low. Let's so this piece is done, that piece is done, this piece hasn't been dealt with, so we'll just call this back near roundy low, and we'll select it, go to our main layer with high. So we're almost to the end, guys. This piece is done, this piece is done, all of these pieces are done. You know, it's such an ordeal, but it is a very nice fill-in to be done. If we look at this, this piece just has subdivision, this piece just has subdivision, meaning that they could just be merged together. And we could call this back in high, and then we can go to our other layer, select this, F2, back in low, and we could just unhide everything, and we could go back to this layer and unhide everything. And let's also make sure that we're on the layer that we're supposed to be, so that way everything behaves right. So this is our low mesh. If we give ourselves a start frame, we also have the animation happening. So this is the low being driven in the same way that the high is. In fact, we could go to the SCN file where everything's taking place, and we could just like Shift A, insert a high, reset it, insert a low, reset it, and just admire our handiwork so far. So now we have a low unwrapped version, and then we have our high version that we made that of course we're going to be omitting the glass for. And in our SCN, this is here just for the presentation. It doesn't have anything to do with the final goals. So I'm going to Shift G, let's try color. And I feel like color should actually select the same material, or that there should be a way to basically select everything of the same material, but alas, there is not. So I'm going to hide the lights and then unhide the lights in order to bring back just the lights. Let's also get rid of the reference image and just take a moment to admire our handiwork and where we've gotten so far, because this is all just for us to go in Substance Painter and talk about things, paint it up a little bit, and then export it, and hopefully still have this animation whenever it's on Sketchfab. So previously we left off admiring our high poly that we now have unified, and then we were admiring our low poly that is fairly simple and now able to basically bake like a beauty. So let's press escape to stop this, and let's go to our high, and I'm just going to select everything. Let's just set everything to frame 199. That's how we've been partying, working on frame 199. And I'm just going to select everything that's on this collection, and we're going to press Q, go under export, and we can just export as an OBJ. And I'm just creating a folder. And so from here, we're just going to call this Piston 1_3 high. Everything else is already set by default whenever you export using hops. And so we just wait a brief moment. Since it's rather high, 286,212 vertices, it might take a moment, but that's fine, as long as it does it successfully. And now we can jump to layer 3 where we have the low. And so let's just select it. and we press Q, go under settings and export OBJ. And I'm going to export this one with the prefix low. And that's it for the export process. Now we can go into Substance Painter and begin painting it. So jumping over into Substance Painter, I'm not sure what ASMs are, but let's just choose ASM Metallic Roughness, and we'll set our document resolution at 2048. And if we were able to have fun with this process, then one of the things I do enjoy testing with every use of Substance Painter is the new auto unwrap system. You know, we went through so much work meticulously unwrapping things, but let us auto unwrap just to see what results we get. I think those are actually my results. Let's try that again. New, File, Low, and we want to choose auto unwrap. I still feel like these are my UVs, so who knows, maybe auto unwrap was being overridden, but let's try it again, and this time we'll just build it proper. So low, 2048, turn off auto unwrap, and it looks like they were giving me the same shell, so I guess I wasn't able to trigger auto unwrap. So the first thing I always do whenever I come into this program is I bake my mesh maps. So we'll bake at 2048, and we'll bring in our high resolution mesh, and I'm going to change the suffixes to be 2 letters instead of multiple. And let's go back to our common parameters. And usually when it comes to this stuff, on my final bakes I'll start playing with the subsampling and I'll set it up real high, but normally the first bakes I will just start off with something just really generic, and then from there just see what I get. So let's just hit bake. And I just saw a beautiful ID. Yeah, I see some nice maps happening back there. Let's click OK. And this is where we are now. This area is kind of a curiosity to me, so I wonder what made it actually come out looking like that from the bake. The rest of this came out about what I was expecting, you know, just expected some details to pop through. This area is a little bit questionable. We might go check it. And when it comes to our threads, the threads are about what I was expecting as well. They'll either work or not work, but with this thing, I am curious as to whether our normals were oriented correctly. So let's press Alt V, look at face orientation, and we see that these normals were definitely not facing the correct direction, and that could actually result in some problems. Let's take a look at some of this mesh that we have going on here, and we can ensure its normals are correct as well. These are things we probably should have checked previously, but life is a learning ordeal. Let's select this shape, and let's just press I. And that almost works. And we could also put a mirror back on this, except we want to press X and reset it, so that way what we do on one side takes place on the opposite side. And I feel like this could use some loops of reinforcement. And we also want to put a triangulate on this prior to subdivision in order to help it hold things together a little bit better, because this is the high. On the high we can have whatever we need in order to do the job. So let's press Q, go under settings, export OBJ, and all we're doing is literally replacing the high with a file of the exact same name, all because in Substance Painter, I forget what to call this now because it's called PT. So in Adobe PT, that sounds just terrible. We want to get rid of that issue. So let's just check and make sure that our export went through successfully. And because we can rotate our view, that means we are good to go. So let's go back over here and we'll choose to bake our texture maps again. And let's just bake our textures. and I can already see it looking a lot better. So we pull back and take a look at this, and this is basically our bake result, just getting in here, just playing with exploded baking. You know, we don't have to deal with overlapping artifacting related issues. We could actually get in and begin painting this model in earnest. So in the next video, we'll be just talking about just some regular painting and substance designer or substance painter, and just having some fun with it. So with that, I'll wrap up this video for now, and I thank everyone for watching.